You betrayed us. I'm not going anywhere with you.
We finally get a showdown with Edgar Evernever, but of course now a new mystery unfolds. So let's break down Riverdale Season 4, Episode 3 and find out just what happened. What's going on, you lovely people? Lisa here, back to ramble about another episode of Riverdale, but at this point, it's pretty much turning into Abdale, right? For those of you who are waiting for my This Is Us recaps, first, thank you for being patient. Second, I promise it'll be up this week. I know I am behind, but be sure to subscribe so you know when that recap and all my other videos get uploaded. Alright, so this week's episode of Riverdale finds the farm coming back into the picture as Alice faces off with Edgar, and we get Moose back. But of course, they do him pretty freaking dirty, and well, things just continue to get ridiculous, so let's break it all down. First up, we have Cheryl, who is still hiding her dirty little secret in the basement, and by dirty little secret, I mean disgusting, decomposing body of her brother JJ. Now, Cheryl and Tony wake up in the middle of the night and hear noises in the walls, and Cheryl quickly blames that on Nana Rose, and it's like, poor Nana Rose. Cheryl probably blames her farts on Nana Rose too. I mean, Nana Rose is just a scapegoat at this point. Anyway, we do see that Nana Rose sleepwalks and says something kind of interesting.
I thought I saw the triplets burning in the fire.
So does this tie into the so-called vision of the twins burning in the fire that Betty had a while ago that never seemed to be addressed again? Also, triplets? So is there another freaking Blossom running around somewhere? Like, I don't think I can deal with that. If they're gonna add something like this in, it's just getting nuts. But, you know, the Archie horror comics, Blossom 666, in that there is a reveal that Cheryl and Jason were actually triplets and the firstborn was taken by cultists. So yes, this could definitely be something that could come into play on this show. And well, next week is the Halloween episode, so at this point, anything ridiculous is possible. But back to the plot line here. Tony thinks that they need help with Dagwood and Juniper because, you know, she doesn't trust Nana Rose with the twins, so she hires a male night nurse she finds on the internet, which totally sounds trustworthy, right? Well, enter hot Darius. Now, Cheryl is reluctant at first, but gives in, of course, giving Darius the rule that the basement, especially the chapel, is verboten. Later, Cheryl goes down to pay her dear brother a visit and notices that he has moved spots, and when Darius says that he went to the basement because they have a rat problem and he needs money to fix it, Cheryl lashes out at him for going where he wasn't supposed to and fires him. Cheryl then goes to check on JJ, and the rat problem is real because a rat freaking pops out of Jason's stomach. So Cheryl then goes to sew Jason back together when Tony just happens to walk in.
You never met Jason, have you?
Yeah, not quite the reaction I would have expected from Cheryl, considering she yelled at Tony for even being near the door. The fact that she's actually in the building, in the little room, maybe she's been like, okay, there's no point in trying to cover it up now. I would have thought that she would have freaked out and pushed Tony out of the room, but instead it looks like Cheryl wants the two most important people in her life to meet, and all I gotta say is run, Tony. Run. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, they're continuing to do Cheryl dirty, I feel like, with this storyline. Like, I can't be the only one who thinks it's completely ridiculous, and I'm sorry. Keeping your dead body's brother is like one of the biggest red flags ever, and how Tony doesn't run away just baffles me. Now, for Veronica, she's struggling still with whether or not to change her name. Now, she ends up getting a visit from Hiram, who seems to be able to come and go from jail as he pleases since he owns it, and I don't know why he just wouldn't stay out of jail. Anyway, he's caught wind of this name change, and he tells Veronica a story about how he changed his name from Jaime Luna to Hiram Lodge because he didn't want to be associated with his father's last name because his father was looked down upon and he felt like he would be too. Hiram then tells Veronica that he now understands the rage his father had when he found out Hiram was changing his name, and Hiram warns Veronica that changing her name won't wash away her sins because, well, Lodge is unfortunately in her blood. Veronica, though, thinks she won't go down the same path as Hiram, but we've seen pretty much she is a criminal and is going down that same path, just might be a little more of a nicer, better-hearted criminal, but still a criminal. Veronica ends up going to visit Hiram later in this episode back in jail, letting him know that she did decide to change her name to Veronica Luna. Yeah, like, everyone in town doesn't already know who she is. Like, I think the name change does nothing for her unless she actually gets out of Riverdale. Just ask Moose, who I'll get to in a second, who learns that his name, if you're still stuck in this area, is cursed. But before I get to all that, let's talk about little Archiekins. So Archie and Monroe, who I still honestly want to call Mad Dog. It's taking me a long time to adjust to calling him Monroe, but Apparently on the show, that's his wish. They are still trying to turn this boxing gym into a community center, and their plans get fast-tracked when Monroe's little brother is hanging around the bad places like the arcade, and the town is being overrun by dealers again. We have Mrs. Weiss informing Archie and Mary Andrews that if they're going to turn this gym into a community center, it's going to have to pass inspection and get a lot of upgrades, which is going to cost at least 40 grand. Now, Veronica offers to loan this money to Archie, but he's too prideful and refuses and wants to work for it. So they decide to flip the usual bikini car wash on its head, because if you have this many guys with amazing abs on the show, you have to show it off, right? As we have learned every episode when Archie takes his shirt off. So Archie, Reggie, and the guys have a shirtless car wash, and I really think this scene was only to distract us, to try to make us forget how ridiculous the show gets. Well, this car wash unfortunately only makes 400 bucks, and Monroe's little brother ends up getting jumped, and it's traced back to a guy named Dodger. I'm guessing a nod to the Oliver Twist, who recruits kids from the arcade to deal and do his dirty work. Now, Monroe wants to go teach this guy a lesson old school, go beat the crap out of him, but Archie says we can't do that, and he's going to talk to FP. Well, guess what? He doesn't end up talking to FP, because after a talk with Mary, she ends up revealing that she wants Archie to come to Chicago to live with her, and that Riverdale isn't safe, aka the talk everyone should be having and why they should all be moving out of this town.
All the crime here, your friend Monroe's little brother, beaten up by a bunch of thugs? Is that really the town that you want to invest in? No one is safe here.
Now, of course, Archie gets mad, saying that she's giving up on Riverdale. Fred never did, so Archie never is going to. And Archie decides to take matters into his own hands and horribly disguises himself and arms himself with a baseball bat and gets into a 5-on-1 fight with Dodger and his gang, and somehow manages to win. Like, they don't show us this fight, but Monroe ends up finding Archie sleeping at the gym, and Archie's pretty beat up, and somehow Archie has also managed to fend off these 5 guys and steal a bag of their dirty money. Like, does Archie have freaking 9 lives? Like, he keeps getting in these gang fights, getting beaten to nearly death, surviving bear attacks, and it's just kind of like, really? No one would survive all this. Oh well. Monroe, though, isn't too happy with Archie that he did this whole little, beat up plan without him, and now they want to use this stolen dirty money to help with the renovation. So Archie asks his criminal girlfriend, who of course would know how to clean money, if she can help, and Veronica is actually like, dude, this is not good, you need to put aside your pride, let me help you and burn that dirty money. Now Veronica, she just wants to be a part of whatever Archie is doing, and it seems sweet, but also it's kind of like Archie will forever be indebted to Veronica now, so if she ever, if he ever pisses her off or things go south, she is a lodge, and she could use this to her advantage. Anyway, Mary Andrews ends up heading over to the gym before she starts to head out of town, and she sees Monroe teaching the kids boxing and seems to have a change of heart and tells Archie she'll now be sticking around and doing some pro bono work in Riverdale, which includes getting the gym/community center registered as a non-profit so they can accept donations and all of that. So let's hope that Archie burned that dirty money and he can use the money Fred and Mary saved for his college fund actually for college, and that this will be a clean business. But don't worry, Dodger will definitely figure out probably that Archie is the one who came to steal his money, and I don't think we've seen the last of Dodger, so get ready, Archie. Now for the face-off that we've been seeming to build up for a long time between the farm and Betty and Alice, which I personally thought was a letdown, but let's proceed with what happened here. So Charles and the FBI have the hotel where Edgar and the Farmies are staying under surveillance, and they know that a pizza gets delivered the same time every day, so they decide to send an undercover agent there who immediately gets sniffed out for not being their regular guy and killed, and it's just like, seriously, you thought that would work? Edgar then gets on the wire and calls Charles out, saying he knows all his secrets and says, wait to hear from me. Well, Betty then gets a call from Alice's phone at school, and it turns out to be Edgar, who tells her his demands because he thinks that Betty will be better at convincing Charles to get it done, and Edgar gives Betty 5 hours to meet his demand. Betty then calls Charles, and Charles calls Governor Dooley, but Governor Dooley doesn't want to meet any of Edgar's demands and won't negotiate with the cult leader. So then Edgar calls, and Charles tells Betty to buy him some time. Charles and Betty demand that Edgar send them a hostage in good faith, and well, Edgar is a step ahead of them and sends Polly to the office, and she has a bomb strapped to her. And it seems like Charles knows a lot about bombs and is trying to tell Betty what lines to cut and what to look for, and then Betty tries to disarm this bomb. Like, what is going on, Charles? If you're the FBI agent and you have all these knowledge of bombs, why are you letting your little sister, who has no idea what's going on, risk her life to go and do this. Like, you're an asshole, man. But luckily, Betty is pretty savvy and ends up saving the day thanks to a bobby pin of all things and disables the bomb. Polly then fills them in on Edgar's plan and that Alice is still alive but might not be for long, so they gotta move fast because Edgar sniffed her out as the mole a while ago. Betty then decides that since Charles and Governor Dooley aren't gonna help, she's gonna take matters into her own hands, and she goes to Veronica to borrow money, then she goes to Tony to get fake passports, and then steals a school bus and drives to the farm. Now Edgar lets her in and Betty tries to plead with him, but Evelyn ends up knocking her out and Betty wakes up tied up next to Alice in one of the motel rooms. Now Alice informs Betty of Edgar's plan. It's to have Evelyn drive a bus of farming off a cliff with Betty and Alice strapped to the front as a distraction while Edgar takes off in this rocket that he's built. Yes, you heard me right. Edgar takes off in the rocket that he's built, and it's like, what the fuck? Betty then tells Alice they gotta get out of there, and they manage to untie themselves, hide, and knock out Evelyn when she comes looking for her. Betty then steals Evelyn's gun and puts on Evelyn's outfit, thinking somehow that's going to disguise her from all the farmies, and she tells them to get on the bus. Then, of course, Fangs recognizes her, as he should, and almost outs her, but, gets knocked out by Betty. Thankfully, Mr. Weatherby has finally snapped out of the farm's hold. It only took him losing a finger for that to happen, and he helps Betty get everybody on the bus. Betty then calls Charles, and he says that Governor Dooley is sending a team of mercenaries there to invade very soon, and Betty says that, they gotta stand down, otherwise innocents will be killed. While this is happening, Alice takes the gun they took off Evelyn and goes to find Edgar on the roof. And indeed, this man is now dressed like he's freaking Evel Knievel and he has a fucking rocket. What? Who escapes in a rocket, and where the hell is he going to go? Like, what was the logical thinking behind this? Well, Alice and Edgar end up having a gun duel, and Betty runs up on the roof to find out that Alice has indeed shot Edgar. Now, Betty is back home in Jughead's arms, where it seems like she's safe, and Alice is back working on her expose, while Polly has gone to a treatment facility, this time to hopefully actually get freaking help. And then Jughead decides to ask the question I think all of us have been asking since Charles appeared in the first place.
What about Charles? Is he the real deal? Can we trust him?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't really know if we can trust Charles. It just doesn't seem like things are adding up with him. He seems shady, and it's kind of like, can't we just let Betty have something nice for once? Let her have the brother that she's missed, that Alice has wanted, that son. You already gave her a messed up fake brother, and then her dad's a serial killer. Like, give this girl a break. Oh well, I guess time will tell if Charles is the real deal or just this another snake in the grass. Now, let's talk about Jughead. I mean, Forsyth and his new life at Stonewall Prep. So Jughead moves into his dorm room, and guess who his new roommate is? It is Marmaduke. No, not the dog, but the character formerly known as Moose. Yes, Marmaduke is this character's real name from the comics, but let's face it, it's a horrible name. Like, why would you do that to your kid, man? Well, Marmaduke ends up filling in Jughead on how he had a breakdown after his father was arrested for impersonating the Gargoyle King. He went to a treatment facility, got some help, and decided to start over and came to Stonewall Prep to play football. But no one knows about his previous life, so he really needs Jughead to stay tight-lipped on this because the people here are ruthless, especially Brett. You remember him, the guy from last episode who looks like he's 40 that we're supposed to believe is a high school student. But of course, right when Marmaduke is saying watch out for Brett, Brett shows up and appears, and we head to seminar. There, Brett reads one of his stories to the group, and all the other students are praising it and boosting his ego. And well, Jughead ends up calling it a Salinger derivative, which pisses Brett off, and then he goes off on Jughead's Gargoyle King story, and Mr. Chipping finally steps in, saying that good writing has authenticity, and maybe neither of them can relate to each other. Well, that just sets Brett off, who then goes in on Jughead about Jughead's past and being trailer trash and all this, and how, of course, Brett wouldn't be able to relate to that. Well, that pisses Jughead off enough to want to just smash Brett's head in, but Mr. Chipping steps in, saying the school has a zero violence policy. So Brett is, of course, sitting there thinking he is untouchable. Jughead then goes back to his room and walks in on Marmaduke hooking up with a girl named Donna, who is also in the seminar, because as we know, Marmaduke is bisexual. Donna informs Jughead that Brett is the son of a diplomat, so he thinks he has immunity and can do whatever he wants. She then tells Jughead to beware of Brett because he fights dirty and he fights psychologically. Then Mr. Chipping cancels the next seminar and instead assigns the group the task of writing a new ending to a mystery, and then everyone's going to vote on their favorite. Well, as they're trying to write their new endings, Brett keeps messing with Jughead, and Jughead finally snaps at Brett, which I think leaves Brett pretty shook.
And I have friends and family that actually care for me.
Can you even say the same? So why don't you try writing a compelling drama instead of starting it?
That's right, Jughead may be so-called trailer trash, but at least he has a family that loves him, unlike this Brett guy who probably has parents who just fly off and leave him alone with a bunch of money. Anyway, when it's time to vote for the winner of this little contest, Donna ends up winning, and it's revealed that Jughead and Brett ended up with the least amount of votes, which does not make Brett happy. It then seems like this sets Brett off as Jughead ends up going back to his room and finding articles about Marmaduke's dad and his past plastered all over the dorms. And Marmaduke is freaking out, saying that he's pretty much done here. And this makes me kind of fear for him, being like, oh, please don't do anything bad, dude. Please, Jughead, save Marmaduke. And why do I keep calling him Marmaduke? I can't do it. I'm gonna keep calling him Moose, although I think that's the last time I reference him in this video, so it doesn't really matter. But if he comes up again, you're being called Moose. I'm not gonna call you Marmaduke anymore. Just like I'm not gonna call Jughead Forsyth. So, back to the story. Jughead then returns home for a cuddle session with Betty and fills her in, saying that Brett must have done this and the psychological war has started. And Betty just tells him to be careful. And then the doorbell rings, and on the doorstep is a box with a VHS tape, and thus begins another freaking mystery, I guess. Like, we need another one. Like, there's so many that haven't been wrapped up, I feel like. But like, where is this VHS tape from? It showed up as Betty and Jughead were sitting there talking about Brett and Charles. So does it have to do with Brett? Does it have to do with Charles? Does it have to do with Stonewall Prep? Is it exposing somebody? What on earth is this tape? Does it have to tie in, or does it tie in with this future flash forward we know where Jughead goes missing or is stuck in a casket or coffin or whatever it is, and I'm sure Stonewall Prep is behind it. Like, Stonewall Prep is definitely shady. I'm getting some like Skulls vibes or something like that from it, right? So yeah, we have a lot of questions, but essentially this episode we have Archie making a new enemy in Dodger while he tries to launch his community center, Veronica changing her name, thinking that it's gonna make her past go away. We have Jughead making an enemy in Brett, and then we have, you know, what seems to be Edgar dead and Alice back home working on an expose, and probably going to bond with Charles, and we'll see if Charles is good or not. But for now, let's watch the promo for the next episode, which is our Halloween episode.
Who is this?
You know who this is.
Jason's ghost. He's angry and now he's haunting us. Leave me alone!
Tell me, Betty, do you know this call is coming from inside the house?
Okay, yeah, that episode seems like it's gonna be interesting. I mean, it's the Halloween episode, it's Riverdale. I feel like anything ridiculous could happen. Ouija boards are involved. Is JJ gonna come to life? Or we're gonna have zombie JJ? Like, what's going on? I don't know. But in Riverdale news for what's ahead this season, we do know that in episode 9, we'll be meeting 2 new characters. Fred Andrews' brother comes to town, which I actually don't think I'm too excited about. I want to believe all the Andrews men are good, so if this guy comes in and isn't good, I'm not gonna be happy about it. Yeah. We also are going to meet Forsyth Pendleton the First, Jughead's grandfather, who apparently, as we learned, went to Stonewall Prep for a little bit and then quit. So I'm guessing maybe Jughead seeks him out in order to find answers about what the hell is happening at this creepy school he's going to. But yeah, that's all I got for this week's Riverdale edition of What Happened. So now I want to hear from you down in the comments below or on social media. What did you think of this episode? Were you let down by Edgar's death? Like, that's how it ended with the farm. Do you think Charles is trustworthy? And what do you think about this VHS tape? What is that going to tie into, and what is on it? Let me know all your thoughts and theories, and don't forget to subscribe and check out more of my videos and interviews right over here. As always, I'm Lisa, and thanks for letting me ramble about this ridiculousness. I'll see you soon.